Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I think before we will introduce the candidate, Dr. Ezekwesili, the proper thing is to, first of all, introduce some of the party leadership that are in our midst this afternoon. And before I will introduce the candidate, I want to start from the party, because it is the party that produces the candidate. So the first person I will introduce now is the National Secretary of the Allied Congress Party of Nigeria, who is here physically, Chief Paul Isamade. Please stand up for recognition, please. Hope, progress, and prosperity. So the next person sitting by his side is the National Financial Secretary of the ACPN, Honorable David Okagwe. And prosperity. ACPN, hope, progress, and prosperity. And I also want to come to the front here to sit with them, the Lagos Chapter Chairman of the Allied Congress Party of Nigeria, Mr. Gbajuma. Please come out. Come forward, please. Go and sit beside them. Do you have your secretary here, the state secretary? To be joined by the state secretary, Lagos State Chapter Secretary of the ACPN, Reverend Godwin. Reverend, it's been quite a while. You're welcome. Thank you. Please, who are these seats reserved for? Reserved for who? Because it's not proper for us to have vacant seats without anybody sitting on them here. Please, party leaders, please, from Lagos State, please, come forward and sit here. So before I go to the candidate, so I want to seize this opportunity to welcome all the members of the press. We thank you for being there, for the publicity that you have been given to our party, and especially our candidate, Dr. Ezekwesili. So at this junction, so I want to introduce to all of you our able and capable presidential candidate. The woman with the greatest passion for this country. The woman who has put in everything to eradicate corruption in this country, even though they were not being faithfully followed. The woman, the only Nigerian from the south of the country that stick her neck out to protect people from the north. The woman is a wise side, economic wise side. She's an activist. And I think this moment, the only person that the Nigerian people needs to solve the myriad of problems facing this country. In Nigeria today, beside security, the greatest problem of this country today is economy. So I don't know if you people have noticed it. If you people have aligned with me, the economy of this country is going backward, and it's not good for us. The unemployment rate is becoming so alarming. Nigerians are feeling hungry. Our economy has been changed back to an import-dependent economy. It's not good for us. If we import everything, where would the job come from? So at this junction, so I want to introduce to you Dr. Ezekwesili, the presidential candidate of the Allied Congress Party of Nigeria. former Vice President of the World Bank, economic advisor to more than 57 countries of the world. Please let me clap for him. A lot of applause for her.
We have reached the point of no return.
Yeah.
The out-of-school children need a champion to fight for them.
Please sit down.
Our brothers and sisters across the north and the south being slaughtered while our government watches and makes excuses. They need a champion to fight for them. Our small business owners whose businesses are not being funded with government loot need a champion to fight for them. Our army of unemployed young people who are depressed and about to give up need a champion to fight for them. Our patriotic fighting soldiers who are laboring under difficult conditions to keep us safe need a champion to fight for them. But we don't need just one champion. This is not just about Obi Ezekwesili. We need many more champions. In fact, we need to be each other's champion.
The ACPN, please sit down, gentlemen and ladies. The ACPN government wanted to create 80 million jobs for Nigeria. We wanted to take Nigerians out of poverty. Now I want to leave Our Excellency in the waiting by the special grace of God to tell Nigerians, to tell all of you, the members of the press, how this job will be created. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chairman.
You're welcome.
My chairman is a very, he's a very affable chairman. He's not, and I am not one given to flattery, but he's quite affable. And he's teaching me the ropes in politics because I am a novice. And he's teaching me. Every day I'm learning. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming out today. First, let us apologize that we're in a city where road congestions are the normal things to Timidakolo for that phrase. And that belief is what drives me every day of this journey. I am very determined to continue to believe in our country, Nigeria, because a belief in Nigeria is the best way and the best approach for solving problems. I think I have a technical challenge. You can give me my phone. Excuse us, we have a technical challenge. Thank you very much. I believe in Nigeria, as I was saying, and that belief in Nigeria forms the basis of a tenacity to fight for Niger. I believe that anyone who shares my belief would also fight for Niger. I am an impatient optimist. I cannot stand it when we choose to accept mediocrity or resign ourselves to lowly standards in Nigeria. Nigeria can do much better than it does. I care very much about Nigeria, and I care very much about Nigerians enough to know that the back-to-back failed leadership has held us back for far too long. And if we do not take a stand and take our country back, they would still be here in years to come, holding back our children and their children. But God forbid. I have a dream of a new Nigeria that works for all, not just for a small clique who see politics as their means to stupendous wealth, while the majority of the people they govern are afflicted with poverty and misery. I have a dream of an inclusive and prosperous country where there is equality of opportunity for all. Our country will be a great meritocracy where success in life is not determined by your background or tribe or gender or religion or, in fact, your family name, but by your talents and your hard work. I have a dream of a strong, indivisible nation with a united purpose and shared national values. I have a dream of a new Nigeria that finally manages her diversity effectively and draws on the benefits of our greater creativity, innovation, and shared progress. The Nigeria we would start building from 2019 would not trudge into the future with uncertainty like chickens when we have all it takes to soar with confidence. Excuse us and forgive us. The number one of these 7 issues, too little productivity and competitiveness of the Nigerian economy. For a nation of our size and our potentials, our low real gross domestic product of $375 billion after 58 years of independence is terribly underwhelming, unlike the economy of China, which grew in double digits over almost 3 decades, rising to $14 trillion as of 2017. Nigeria's gone. But that is not even the worst part. According to the World Poverty Clock, if the current trends continue, or to put it another way, if we continued to elect this poverty-bringing leadership, the number of people living in extreme poverty in Nigeria would increase from about 88 million today to 120 million in 2030. That means that in the next 12 years, over 30 million Nigerians, 30 million more Nigerians will join the infamous number of extremely poor people who live on less than 700 naira a day. When a country has a Gini coefficient above 35%, it means that the income of, I'll take that again. It means that the income inequality in that country is extremely high. When a country has a Gini coefficient above 35%, it means that the income inequality in that country is very high. Nigeria's Gini coefficient is between 46 and 60%. Ladies and gentlemen, such level of extreme inequality has all sorts of inequality, and lifting 80 million people out of poverty will be, I take that again. Such levels of extreme inequality has all sorts of destabilizing implications for the country. Tackling the inequality and lifting 80 million people out of poverty will be the mission of my presidency. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to start the deliberate hard work of pulling ourselves, our friends and our families, and our communities from this destructive poverty. It's a tsunami that is sweeping through our nation, and time is not on our side. The number 3 issue, too much insecurity and conflict. Nigeria is now the 14th most, are completely wiped out due to insecurity. Number 4, too much illiteracy. 13.2 million children and counting are out of school. That is much more than the entire population of the Republic of Benin. Even those who have the privilege of attending our schools these days receive an education that is unfit for purpose and unfit for the competitive and productive country we intend to build. Education will be the number 1 priority of my government. As Bill Gates, the founder of Microsoft, said, education is like a master switch that opens up all sorts of opportunities for individuals and societies. End of quote. I intend to fully turn up that switch if elected president of Nigeria. Number 5, too much health and well-being challenges. The World Health Organization, WHO, ranks the Nigerian healthcare system as 187th out of 190 healthcare systems in the world. Just last month, the World Bank released its first ever human capital index, and Nigeria was in the bottom 6 out of 157 countries ranked. My position on health is that it is a fundamental human right. Nigeria loses too much when its human capital do not live healthy lives. Health is central to lifting our people out of poverty. It is central to ensuring that we have a competitive and productive economy. And in my government, health will occupy a central place. Number 6, too much infrastructural deficit. Our country has become notorious for its horrible infrastructure. Roads that are simply death traps, epileptic electricity supply, insufficient broadband connectivity, underwhelming rail and ports development. There is little physical infrastructure to link and connect the urban and rural centers of our country. We must heed the Chinese and listen to their words when they say, if you want to improve the lives of your people, connect them to the markets by giving them roads. Number 7, too much structural faults. Our current federal structure simply does not work. The structure of a federation is its skeleton. A functional structure gives shape, support, and aids the movement of the federation. No wonder Nigeria is handicapped under this dysfunctional structure. There was a time when the APC agreed on the need to restructure the federation and devolve more powers to the regions and the states. The party campaigned in 2015 on a manifesto that propagated the doctrine of restructuring. President Buhari went along with it every step of the way because it was all about getting into power. He won and then began to renege on his promises, including on restructuring. He suddenly remembered all the reasons why the structure is not the problem with Nigeria. Ladies and gentlemen, today I am releasing my platform's proposal on how we would lift 80 million Nigerians out of poverty. My plan proposes a better future for Nigerians. It is a blueprint of possibilities and a pledge to Nigerians of what an ACPN government can achieve. Our program will provide hope, progress, and prosperity for everyone. We will be radical but responsible. We will think big while living within our means. Let me highlight the economic philosophy of my government, the fundamental principles and the concepts that will guide our governance. A strong belief in the dominant economic role of the private sector and commitment of our government to launch vigorous market economy reforms. Through policy, effective regulation, and catalytic public investment in the provision of basic services for our people and businesses, we will accelerate and expand the success and the sources of growth in the economy. Ladies and gentlemen, we will secondly have a massive program of deregulation of the Nigerian economy to unleash the depth of and efficiencies necessary for higher and deeper economic growth and expansion of the economy. The division and rebalancing of roles between business and government will reduce opportunities for corruption and bottlenecks that limit the competitiveness of the Nigerian economy today. Number three, a strong commitment to pursuing growth that is inclusive, which is a necessity for lifting the poor to an improved state of well-being. Research has shown that the poor are uplifted faster in a market economy that is cushioned by relevant safety nets. Number four, a dedication to improving the productivity and competitiveness of Nigeria and Nigerians in every sector of economic activity by removing barriers and providing a menu of sound policy measures. Number five, a deliberateness in easing the doing business environment, not just for major businesses in Nigeria, but for micro, small, and medium enterprises, which are the lifeblood of our economy. Ladies and gentlemen, the main way out of poverty is for people to earn incomes. The way for people to earn incomes is to have profitable work that they do. Social safety nets like cash transfers to the poor are good. The social investment programs are good. But they must only be a side component to a private sector-driven jobs strategy. When people have profitable work to do, it leads to inclusive growth and productivity of an economy. Clearly, there is a link joining it all together. Our growth and productivity can only happen when our people have lots of jobs and when they earn income that pulls them out of poverty. Right now, people simply do not have jobs. The entire population of Togo is about 8 million people. That is the number of people who lost their jobs in just 20 months between January 2016 and September 2017 under President Muhammadu Buhari, according to the Nigeria Bureau of Statistics, NBS. 8 million jobs lost in just 20 months. Think of it. Think about this for a second. Those are not just numbers. They are human beings. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8 million humans lost their jobs. These are people with families. They have people who depend on them. We all know someone who has lost a job in this economy. You may even be one of them. We all have families and friends who call us on the phone pleading for any change we could spare at all to help them to survive one more day. How long are we going to continue to live like that? But the thing is that the government does not have the resources or the capacity to provide these much needed jobs to our people. That is a settled truth, no matter what any politician says to you. Therefore, in building our new Nigeria, the private sector will be the engine of economic growth and development. Our philosophy for tracking the challenges that we face will be market-based, private sector-driven, and government-supported. Government has a role to play in enhancing the market, not undermining it. When I am president, we will embrace that role effectively. We will set the vision, we will lead on policy, we will ensure smarter, better, and clearer regulations. We will help correct important market failures and market distortions. And we will, of course, invest in critical areas like developing the human capital to power our 21st century economy and leading the way on big-ticket infrastructure development. Now, let us talk about some of our programs, some of the ways we intend to lift 80 million Nigerians out of poverty and to propel this country and its great people to their rightful place in the world. Number one key program for us, and it's the core of our program, human development shall be our new economy. Education and skills development of healthy Nigerian people shall be our number one priority. No matter what we do, we will never win the war on poverty without investing massively in human capital development. That is why our ACPN government, education will be the new oil. Education will be the new economy. My vision for education is one that will nourish the mind, create a good and progressive society that competes globally. Ladies and gentlemen, if our current and future human capital are not educated, they will most likely end up in poverty, and our economy will lose the productivity that we would have added. We shall launch a root and branch reform of all the levels and phases of education, starting with early child care education, basic education, secondary education, special needs education, and adult informal education. They will all be systemically reformed to achieve universal access to quality and relevant education by all Nigerians. Education, training, and skills development remain the most potent tools of economic and social mobility in all progressive societies. Breaking the vicious cycle of poor education is crucial for promoting inclusive economic growth and decent jobs for all. Just look at the numbers of children out of school in Nigeria. 13.2 million children. That is a time bomb, and it is already exploding all around us. 22% of the total number of out-of-school children in the whole world are our Nigerian children. My government will reverse that. Starting from next year, we would quickly move to improve access. My government would reduce the number of out-of-school children by 20% annually. That will bring it down from 13.2 million to about 5.4 million by 2023. And by then, we would have put in place structures and policies that would ensure that progress is irreversible and education for all is achieved well before 2030. You can hold me to this. Do you know how I know that it can be done? Because had done it before. I served as education minister for 10 months, which is one academic session. From year 2000 till today, that is a period of 18 years. And it was the only time that the number of out-of-school children in this country reduced. It was when I was Minister of Education. That is a fact. The records are there, just 10 months. And we dropped the number by almost 500,000. But the moment I left the Ministry of Education in 2007, the number immediately went back up by almost 2 million. And it has never dropped again since then. So trust me when I say to you that it is possible. We did it before, we will do it again and ensure that it never becomes a continuing problem. I believe, and there is enough evidence to back me up, that the most important thing that transforms education in any society is the quality of teachers. We have a serious challenge with teacher quality and teacher adequacy in our country. In one particular state, only 0.03% of the teachers were fully competent to teach mathematics and English language at primary school level. The noble teaching profession has been so rubbished that it now only attracts those who do not have alternatives. That is a disaster. Upon getting into office, my government will immediately launch a Teacher Stop Talent. We call it TTT initiative. The aim of the program would be to attract the top talents into teaching because we really have no option. Teaching has to become the first thing that an academically accomplished and problem-solving individual thinks about in choosing a profession. We would provide sweeteners to encourage the brightest and best into the teaching profession. One such initiative would be Housing All Teachers program, which would ensure that a top talent who chooses to go into teaching would have an immediate chance to become a home owner. We would provide seed money, state governments would provide the land, and we would get developers to come on board and make our teachers home owners. One of the fantastic ways of reducing poverty is home ownership. It has been proven by research that housing is a very important pathway to poverty reduction. When a top talent realizes that she has a cheaper opportunity to own her own home rather than be a tenant, she would take on that opportunity. And that, for me, is key and critical in attracting the top talents in our country. Ladies and gentlemen, the other positive of the Housing All Teachers program is the number of jobs it will create. Because with housing, a lot of construction activities have multiplier effects. Just imagine the number of houses that would need to be built under that program, in the hundreds of thousands of them, for teachers across our country. It has a salubrious effect on the wider economy. Still on the issue of teachers, another initiative that we would be launching is Teachers Prestige, Teachers Pride. This initiative would include in-service programs in which teachers would be sponsored on professional training and staff development with a frequency that has never been known. They would be given modules where they meet their peers from across the world to discuss methods and case loads that enable problem-solving skills that must be transferred to their students and pupils. It would also include giving a bite to the Teachers Regulatory Council to implement adherence to certain milestones which teachers must reach in order to be rewarded. If other professions like accounting, medicine, and law are so thoroughly regulated, there is no reason why the very important teaching profession should not be similarly regulated to be a prestigious and honorable profession. The Teachers Prestige, Teachers Pride initiative would also partner with the Teachers Union, state governments, and other stakeholders to look at the payment and the remuneration package of our teachers in order to agree on the scale of reward and opportunities needed to attract our top talent. I know what I am talking about. As Minister of Education, the Salaries and Wages Commission was mandated under one of our initiatives to begin a similar process that was abandoned after I left as minister. Permit me to spend some more time on education. Like I said earlier, it is absolutely crucial to our anti-poverty agenda. Our entire wealth, growth, and poverty reduction strategy is hinged on getting education and human capital development right. Our government will upgrade the curriculum in our schools to align with 21st century needs. We are still stuck in the past as things stand today. Our university curriculum, for instance, needs to be directly linked to the labor market so that as we notice sources of present and future growth of the economy, we immediately think of the kind of skills that must be produced. My administration would also prioritize early child care education for those at the bottom of the pyramid. We will innovate with public and community-funded schemes to enable the children of the poor have solid early child care and preschool education, because research proves that it would give them the necessary leg up that they currently are denied. One of our signature programs when we get elected next year would be 20 to the rank, 20 to the ranking. The 20 to the ranking targets the transformation of 20 Nigerian universities to ensure that they feature in the rankings of the top universities in the world in a matter of 7 years. Our government will grant full autonomy to public universities. That's very important. This cowardly control of universities does us no good. At the time that I was Minister of Education, it was one of the ideas that we had in order to improve tertiary education in the country. It did not go forward. We would continue to fund our public universities with grants that will be linked to performance, results, and accountability, even when they have their autonomy. What will change is that they would operate on world-class basis of performance and accountability. As the universities begin to be innovative on how they raise money to complement the grants from the federal government, under my leadership, we will develop a solid financing model to support students that will be a combination of financial aid, scholarship, and student loans. Financing education of the poor will not be a problem, but we must make sure that the rich pay for their education appropriately. My administration would also integrate accomplished diaspora Nigerians who would serve on the faculties of our local universities. They do not have to leave their current employment, but we will enter into partnership programs with their institutions. Thank you. Thank you very much. Such we would enter into partnership programs with their institutions abroad, such that they would teach in several Nigerian universities at once with the help of multimedia and teaching assistants. Human capital development does not revolve around acquiring a university degree alone. Not everyone can or will attend universities, but every single Nigerian can get a skill. That is why our ACPN government will be launching a massive national skills program called Get a Skill, GAS. GAS, G-A-S, will be targeting the training of an annual 900,000 Nigerian young people in diverse skills of learning. In my time as Minister of Education between 2006 and 2007, I was already extremely worried at the mismatch between youth burgeoning, unemployability, and limited economic opportunities, such that our team at that time designed a major skills development program that introduced a new level of certification to our education system. We designed and added vocational enterprise institutions and innovation enterprise institutions under accreditation and regulation by the National Board for Technical Education in Kaduna. There are currently over 200 vocational enterprise institutions and innovation enterprise institutions, but not operating at the level of vision that we had framed when we worked on that innovation in education. What we are interested in doing going forward is to move that agenda to a level of vision where our skills are developed in all sectors that matter to the economy and the private sector. Ladies and gentlemen, looks like we're not stuck. Are we good? All right. However, as you know, 200 vocational enterprise institutions and innovation enterprise institutions are not even enough for a country as large as ours, especially one where it has become so difficult to get skilled hands to drive important aspects of our economy. The government has to be more actively interested and invested in training and skills development, whereas in 2007, our goal was to produce a minimum of 300,000 of such market-sensitive skills annually. We shall be bolder in pushing our agenda. And as I said, we will produce annually 900,000 skilled labor in this country. My government will push the GAS program in partnership with the private sector to ensure more of such institutions coming on board. We need more schools to meet the needs of the construction sector. We need more technical schools to meet the needs of the telecom sector, of the science, technology, and IT sector. We need more schools to meet the needs of the agriculture sector, oil and gas, trade and logistics, and many others. We all know, ladies and gentlemen, that the complement to education for human capital development is health. We know that an unhealthy population is a poor populace. Therefore, no anti-poverty agenda can stand without a solid health strategy. The key planks of our health agenda will be to reverse the negative trend of maternal and infant mortality, child mortality, needless deaths from non-communicable diseases, and reversing the trend of medical tourism. It is woeful. Every Nigerian has to be in the system, starting with those currently earning an income and widening to those without an income. We would also attract at least 3 top quality global health providers linked to the NHIS in each sub-region of our country. At the level of primary health care, we intend to provide incentives that would make primary health care a market-based system. It makes no sense for the government to set up primary health care centers in communities and then leave them without doctors or nurses or any kind of health professionals. We would adopt a PPP model that would outsource the management of these primary health centers to private providers, and where payments to these providers would be linked to performance. It would be targeted subsidies to the poor in our rural communities, such that only a tiny social fee would need to be paid by them, while they are guaranteed of the kind of health care that they currently do not have access to. Under the ACPN government, we would run a results-based health system. Ladies and gentlemen, the second thing that we would do in our programs is that we would pursue a produce more, earn more vision. It will be one that will result in higher productivity and greater competitiveness, higher income, more diversified export earning from wider sources of economic growth in our economy. While Nigeria's productivity stands at less than $3 an hour, countries like Brazil, Russia, and Turkey have productivities at $10.07 an hour, $24 an hour, and $28.9 an hour, respectively. Compare that with our miserable number. Under our Produce More, Earn More initiative, our government will partner with private sector to identify critical measures necessary to increase Nigeria's productivity to at least $10 an hour over the next 4 years by introducing a range of policy measures, cutting a wide variety of bureaucratic and regulatory bottlenecks in all sectors, providing the right mix of critical infrastructure and relevant training and skills as well as capacities for the business sector. We shall unleash higher labor productivity and consequently improve the income growth for individuals, households, businesses, and government. Through the productivity and competitiveness initiatives, we shall seek to achieve sectoral economic structural transformation. What this means is that we will identify the industries that are of strategic value to our economy and where we have comparative advantage. We would support and promote them through sound policies on trade, tax, infrastructure, skills, training, and research development. It will be on the basis of competitive policy support. This is how it is done in every major economy of the world that has done good for its people. We shall do so, and through it ensure inclusive growth. We will expect productivity boosts and expansion in new opportunities that create jobs from some key sectors like agriculture, fisheries, livestock, and agribusiness, where more than 2/3 of Nigeria's active labor population is found. Light manufacturing industries, construction, housing and public works, renewable solutions, services including trade, telecom and technology, domestic tourism and creative industries. A majority of those operating in the economy are in the informal, low productivity sectors. People like barbers in Bori, the cobbler in Dutse, the petty trader in Onitsha, or the tea seller in Kano. They operate, but at low productivity in our economy. At the end of each day, by the time their business costs are removed, they make maybe 200 naira or 250 naira. How do we ensure that that figure is jacked up to at least 1,000 naira daily for a start? The ACPN government would take away the barriers to the productivity of our citizens in the informal sector. But we shall not do it by compulsion. We are committed to providing them the critical infrastructure, the training, the access to finance, the connectivity to the market, and the kinds of policies that target public investment that ease the doing business environment for both the formal and the informal firms. We would also provide the incentives that would move them from informality to formality and enhance their productivity and competitiveness. Micro, small, medium enterprises play a key role in our economy. Right now, based on the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics data, they account for almost half of the country's gross domestic product and employ over 80% of the labor force in our country. If they are doing poorly, then our economy and our people will do poorly. Yet, the government punishes them and makes everything so difficult for them. The government has turned those honest, hardworking citizens into sufferheads. You must have heard that when the World Bank released its ease of doing business ranking last month, Nigeria dropped in rank to 146th out of 190 countries. My administration will do better for our MSMEs. Within our first 100 days in office, we will launch a sufferhead challenge. We will choose one of our priority sectors every few weeks and publicly publish every single rule and regulation in that sector. We will then throw it open to the general public to tell us the things that are not working, the enemies of their progress, the things that are too complicated, and the things that must go. And then after all the feedback has been received from business people, stakeholders, and the general public, my cabinet will have 3 months to go through them. If a minister wants to keep any regulation, he must defend it and explain why it is useful to keep. If there is no defense, or if the defense is weak, then such a regulation must go. It is as simple as that. But businesses will not be hampered in the time of my governance. Most SMEs are operating without business plans. Most are unaware of available tools that can make them more productive. Many are swamped with paperwork, and most are not so competitive, and therefore they cannot export. And yet, we must earn more foreign exchange and reduce our dependence on oil for exchange resources. The contribution of MSMEs to Nigeria's export is less than 10%. Our ACPN government will launch BizLift, which would be an online portal and national telephone helpline that would offer guidance and advisory services to SMEs employing between 10 and 199 people. We will also support MSMEs to improve their access to markets. A crucial way we intend to do that is through massive road construction and rehabilitation. We intend to increase the paved road network from 65,000 kilometers to 120,000 kilometers. I want to run an honest government, so I would be the first to tell you that the government budget will not be at all sufficient to meet our infrastructural demands, from roads to rail to power to schools. That is why our emphasis will be on partnership with the private sector. For instance, on the issue of increasing our paved road networks to ease access to market for MSMEs. We intend to collaborate with states, businesses, communities, and other stakeholders to agree on new financing models, how they should be paid for, and the accountability that goes with non-performance. If the ACPN government introduces tolling on roads or on any other initiative that has potential to raise rates on citizens, we promise to sign binding service level agreements, SLAs, promising to refund monies back to the Nigerian people if standards are not maintained or we do not meet agreed expectations. We would use biometrics and e-ticketing to target customers who made payments for those services. And if we fail to fulfill our own end of the bargain, refunds will definitely be made. Number 3, we will pursue a 6 growth pole strategy, which will be at the heart of our diversification agenda, as well as our inclusion agenda for nation building. We will focus on optimizing the economic performance and expanding the economies of the 6 geopolitical regions. The federal government will work with the regions and the private sector to produce and implement robust regional economic strategies that will foster sustainable growth. In the Northeast, for example, we will invest in the reconstruction and the reclamation of the Chad Basin for economic expansion. We will also restore communities and livelihoods, because that's the way to keep away the terrorists faster and better. In the North Central, we will restore law and order while optimizing agricultural productivity. In the South-South, we will implement a regeneration agenda for land, communities, and people for a Niger Delta beyond oil. In the Southeast, we will undertake reconstruction for innovation, enterprise, and trade development. In the Southwest, we will place emphasis on optimizing and positioning the region as a magnet for global talents, with the aim of becoming a hub for manufacturing and services. In the Northwest, we shall reignite the competitiveness of value-added leather and textile clustering by attracting light manufacturing industries to the comparative advantages of sources of raw materials for production. Across board, ladies and gentlemen, we would pursue an economy of agglomeration, whereby similar economic activities are clustered together to ensure that businesses and cities can scale and have good connectivity. Our focus on regional development is strategic. The conversation for political restructuring has to begin with fiscal restructuring. We would actively lead the national conversation on restructuring and devolution of powers, which must be had if we are to make progress. Our over-centralization only favors the most powerful. Our governance philosophy will be one that favors the many, not just a powerful clique. We cannot abide this excessively powerful center that overwhelms and reduces the regions with paternalistic ties to Abuja, evident in the frequency of begging bowls and bailout funds to states. The excessive powers of the federal government is partially responsible for the stunted growth and poverty of the states and regions. We shall lead an economic-based dialogue for correcting the structural imbalance that has hobbled the regions and states and created the failure of our fiscal federalism in its practice. Ladies and gentlemen, another component of our growth pole strategy is what we have called the 12 Cities Project. In the 21st century, cities across the world compete amongst themselves to attract investments and to attract the brightest and the best talents. But how many Nigerian cities are even competing? How many Nigerian cities meet the standards of a global city? What we have are just mega slums. We must fix that. Over the next decade, we will transform 12 Nigerian cities into global standard cities. with a mix of well-planned infrastructure, proper positioning as magnets for top talents, and a technology-based modernization agenda. We would identify cities with the potential to massively contribute towards economic growth and become homes to millions of new jobs. We would deliberately build those cities to provide the physical conditions for workers to be productive, because only productivity can pull a people out of poverty and lead to prosperity. Ladies and gentlemen, number 4 is that the failure of the power sector is the clearest proof that what can happen when the federal government refuses to let go of its controls on the economy. This failure is responsible for the situation where 190 million Nigerians manage about 3,500 megawatts of power, whereas South Africa, with 50 million people, generates in excess of 50,000 megawatts. How can a nation be productive without access to energy? There is something called energy poverty, and we must disrupt it. I was a part of the team that contributed in articulating the processes and policies that became the Power Sector Reform Act of 2007. That law contains everything needed to ensure transformation of the power sector and catalyzing a similar level of competition that has happened in our telecom sector. But the federal government continues to covet control. We need complete and true deregulation of the sector. The private sector leadership in this sector is hobbled by excessive control that is politically expedient but economically truncating. As I mentioned earlier, our campaign possesses a strong belief in the dominant economic role of the private sector, and we will completely express that belief in the power sector by updating and fully implementing the Power Sector Reform Act. In entirety, we would consider innovative business models to transform our energy systems, and the Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Authority Commission would be empowered with strengthened regulatory framework that is based on market modeling. And then we shall watch and see as that sector becomes unlocked to provide opportunities and ensure productivity of our businesses and the poor. For us, the energy sector comprehensive strategic plan will ensure a good energy mix of all sources of power to our country. Our government will utilize a national shift to other renewable sources of energy, including solar, wind, and biomass. Number 5, moving on, there is a particular law in Nigeria which has plunged millions of citizens into terrible poverty. During the campaigns 8 years ago, the PDP promised to amend it and failed to amend it. 4 years ago, the APC promised to amend it. It won and has failed to amend it. Now you understand why they are a single entity. They promise and they fail. Ladies and gentlemen, that poverty-inducing law, which the ACPN will amend once and for all when we get into office, is the Land Use Act. Replacing the Land Use Act in a way that ensures massive positive implications for agriculture, for mortgage, for real estate, and for wealth generation in general is very central to our poverty reduction program. There is hardly any other law right now that the government can pass with as much power to unlock wealth as a land reforms law. It is time for us to end this arbitrary approach to land tenure administration and the use of land as a political weapon by governors and local government chairmen. Because of the arbitrary nature of the law, the poor cannot represent their property and get capital. There is hardly any efficient city in the world today without an active land market with clarity on titling. Our government will therefore embark on a land reform agenda that begins with the amendment of the Land Use Act in order to facilitate the creation of an active land market and free transfer of titles. I'm excited about the prospects that this reform holds for the poor of the land. Number 6, another difficult reform which we are committed to implementing is the oil sector reform. When I read somewhere that the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources disclosed that the federal government spends about 1.3 trillion annually on under-recovery, which is the new name that this government has given to fuel subsidy, I was shaken. 1.3 trillion, as in 1.3 trillion? And let me put that figure in perspective for you. The former Minister of Finance told us some months ago that the total amount that the federal government released for capital expenditure in 2017 was 1.3 trillion. Can you imagine that? The total amount of money that this government spent on subsidizing fuel is about the same amount that is spent in the construction of roads and stocking our hospitals with medicine, funding our universities, and working on power, as well as all other types of infrastructure put together. What sort of corrupt approach to governance of oil sector is that? The same fuel that ends up in neighboring countries, the same fuel that the poorest among us in several states across the country pay substantially more for. Some people are feeding fat and buying private jets on our commonwealth. That is why this unwholesome fuel subsidy, even if they have rebaptized it, must go. It is stagnating our economy and impoverishing our people. Just imagine for a second how much good an ACPN government can do with an extra 1.3 trillion to spend effectively and efficiently, considering that my middle name is Madam Due Process in the public contract award system. We can lift many of our citizens out of poverty by filling the infrastructure gap. It is not enough for the fuel subsidy to go. Our government will also deregulate the entire oil sector, including making the NNPC to face the discipline of the market and to ensure that it is subjected to competition. I have no interest in becoming the president of NNPC when there are more important things begging for my attention. Countries are moving away from oil. In fact, in less than 20 years, there are convincing projections that most of the oil would have dried up. So how can a reasonable government be so bothered with signing oil licenses when there is fire on the mountain? President Buhari is so invested in holding on to the power of the petroleum sector himself that he refused to sign the Petroleum Industry Governance Bill. They have all kinds of excuses for not having signed it. But, ladies and gentlemen, the danger of not making progress in having the private sector drive activities in a sector that is given to large-scale corruption is that it continues to distract governance in our land. Oil will come and oil will go, but the Nigerian people will remain. Oil will not build this country, otherwise it would already have. Am I correct? How many cycles of oil boom have we enjoyed or not enjoyed as a people? It is the Nigerian people that must overtake and take the place that oil occupies with our political class. In an ACPN government, it is the Nigerian people that would be our priority. The same kind of attention that these governments give accord to oil will be the attention that we accord to the Nigerian people. When subsidies are removed, number seven, when subsidies are removed, we would set up a 1.5 billion infrastructure fund for which we would give annual reports to the Nigerian people and also sign binding service level agreements on performance and accountability. This is not the kind of thing where you say you will do and you don't do. We would also set up a $1 billion science, technology, and innovation fund to ensure that science, technology, and innovation become the enabler for socioeconomic development and structural transformation of our economy. Our target is to set in motion the work of becoming Africa's #1 innovation and knowledge economy, and to stand up to be counted among countries in the rest of the world. We already know that the problem is not our people. Nigerians are among the most gifted and accomplished people in almost every country in the world where they live. So if it is not working here, it is because we have not allowed, I will take that again. If it is not working here, it is because we have allowed the worst amongst our people to lead the rest of us for far too long. For far too long. And enough is finally now enough. The STI Fund will support the building of a robust national innovation system, and it will carry out reforms and reorganization of existing institutions. It would fund the scale-up of SMEs and startups in the technology space. It would invest in research and development more widely, knowledge transfer, among other activities. The fund will be a partnership between the government and the private sector. Number 8, we will also design and implement policies that will ensure the increase of technology startups in the country by at least 40% in 4 years of our being in office. We will provide tax waivers to incentivize investment in technology. Part of our curriculum review in our schools will see the incorporation of coding and entrepreneurship into the education system. My government will also provide the legal framework to support alternative investment sources like crowdfunding. We would also create an office for a chief innovation officer to manage all innovation initiatives of the government, and a chief data officer to manage all data initiatives to make government smarter and boost innovation in our country. Ladies and gentlemen, I have said it before, and I will say it again. My government will support our young people and will make it a priority for our young people to unleash their creativity in the fields of new, smart, and disruptive technologies, from artificial intelligence to quantum computing, to big data, to Internet of Things, to blockchain technologies, to everything feasible in the world of disruptive technology. The future is here already, and we believe that technology holds the key to solving our poverty crisis, our environmental disasters, our low-level productivity and competitiveness, our healthcare crisis, our infrastructure decay, and even the corruption that afflicts us. Number 9, we have big plans for housing development that includes a national housing program to reduce the cost of starter home for families with the private sector. In what we will do in partnership with the private sector, a reduction of the cost of homes by 50% while increasing quality will be a major deliverable. Within my first 100 days in office, I would launch a Niger home competition that will call for the design of a standard affordable Nigerian home design, which will include 2 bedrooms, a living room, a bathroom, and toilet, and a kitchenette. At least 80% of the homes will be built on low-cost housing basis, whereby allocation shall be based on income. The recipients will be selected from a pool of qualified applicants. The basic Nigeria home will also allow us to lay the foundation for a functional mortgage market that will expand property ownership to millions of Nigerians. Additionally, it will allow Nigerians to launch a dynamic local real estate and housing industry with firms that are active throughout the value chain, from production of construction materials, building sales, to mortgages, all in a package. It will be a massive boost to the economy, facilitate socio-economic development, and create jobs. You can see again how everything we do links back to the central vision of lifting 80 million Nigerians out of poverty. In agriculture, number 10, we want to achieve good food security in our country. We will launch our one product per state initiative, which will partner with states and the private sector to support farmers in states with a product which they have comparative advantage. We would link it to our manufacturing value-added agenda to ensure that productivity of farmers is enhanced and that they move up the value chain quickly. We'll create an enabling environment for agriculture growth by prioritizing the enactment and implementation of streamlined and consistent policies that affect key value chain products such as rice, cassava, maize, poultry, and dairy products. We will also promote knowledge, capacity, and innovation to build a highly productive and competitive agribusiness landscape. We will foster data collection and collation at state and regional levels through public-private partnerships. We will also do the smaller things that can make all the difference, like partnering with the states to provide websites with accurate data on their farmers, the location of their farmers, and the output produce they generate. This will ensure the provision of more effective support services and linkages to off-takers and processors who struggle to find sustainable sources of produce. Needless to say, every year in our comprehensive manifesto, including our anti-corruption, sports, foreign policy, security agenda, and every other program of our platform, will be evaluated on 3 questions. 1, how much wealth is it going to generate? 2, how many jobs is it going to create? And 3, how many people will it lift out of poverty? We will measure our economic success as a government, not by the number of private jets parked at our airports, but by the number of Nigerians we lift out of poverty and who become prosperous. We actually totally and absolutely mean business. This Friday, we will again be back here unveiling the full manifesto beyond just this cornerstone of our plans to end poverty in Nigeria. As with this, we will respect and honor the Nigerians with the data-driven, evidence-based, big ideas solutions to issues that have destroyed our competitiveness, our productivity, and access to opportunity. When I make these promises, I do them with the realization that you are tired of broken promises. The broken promises are the APC-PDP, and they are fresh in your memories. And it has tainted the way that you look at politics. That is why, as a principle, our campaign will only promise what we can deliver, what is based on empirical and analytical evidence. We will deliver anything we promise. Our politics is the promise of a new, honest start to rebuilding and renewing our country. Our direction is clear, and our destination is also clear. When we deliver, we would rebuild the crucial bonds of trust between the people and their government, without which a democracy cannot flourish. Ladies and gentlemen, this election is the most important of our lifetime. I think people say that is often said about every election. But believe me, at no time must we make a definite change of course than now. I believe that the next 4 years could determine the next 40 years of our country. If we failed to get it right, what would we tell our children? What manner of consequences would befall us? What would another 4 years of Butiku presidency mean for you and I? More poverty, more division, more corruption, more debt, more insecurity, more disregard for human rights and human life, more and more of the same. Ladies and gentlemen, we're calling out the other candidates, if they dispute what I have just said, who are running in the 2019 elections, to not retreat into their hiding places this time around. Come out and let us have a debate on our plans for the future of this great country, and let the people decide for themselves who proposes a better path for greatness of Nigeria. Nigerians deserve this debate. Nigerians deserve to hear the solutions and the roadmaps. This campaign is too important, and the ACPN ticket has now shown the courage, the intelligence, the sincerity, and the plan that is ambitious enough to unleash the greatness of our country and make it a case study of what a people can achieve with the right leadership, moving Nigeria from poverty central to prosperity central. In the famous words of America's New Deal President Franklin Roosevelt, we will do what we must with what we have from where we are. And to that, I can only but say, amen and amen. Thank you very much for listening. I am prepared to take any questions. Thank you very much.